Welcome to Dark Truth, where the truth doesn't hide in daylight, it hides in plain sight. Every case you'll hear here was once sealed, erased, or forgotten. Every name was once whispered, then silenced. But in the shadows of every city, there's always one story that refuses to stay buried. This is where the files open themselves. Welcome to Dark Truth, where the truth bleeds through the lies. They called it the Church of No God, a place that worshipped the absence of faith and the silence left behind when prayers die. In the small, forgotten town of Mill Haven, Maine, there stands a ruin. No cross, no altar, no light, just a stone archway that reads, "He is not here." Locals avoid this hill. They say the ground here hums, that even insects won't cross it. The soil is black, burnt, and cold. But once, this place was full of believers. Not believers in God, but believers in nothing. It was built in 1971 by a man whose sermons were banned from every pulpit in America. A man who promised freedom from divine judgment by erasing divinity itself. His name was Reverend Malcolm Gray. They say he built the church on cursed land, where lightning had struck the same spot 13 times in 1 year. And on the night of its dedication, he preached a sermon that ended in screams. By morning, 24 members were missing, and the only thing left inside were robes folded neatly in a circle surrounding a single. Mill Haven forgot that church, but the church didn't forget them. If God created everything, he also created the reason to unmake it. Before he built the Church of No God, Reverend Malcolm Gray was a respected theologian. He taught comparative religion at a seminary in Chicago. Students called him the quiet prophet, calm, brilliant, and dangerously curious. But in 1968, he gave a lecture that changed everything. Its title, The Death of Belief. He began with a single question. If God knows all things, does he already know his own end? The seminary expelled him the next day. His writings were burned. His followers, mostly young idealists, followed him underground. For 7 years, he vanished. Until, in 1971, he reappeared in Mill Haven with 12 disciples, all dressed in white. They claimed to have heard the absence of God in their dreams. They said the silence spoke back. Interview clip, local resident, 1993. He said he'd found a new kind of worship, one without gods or guilt. Said belief was the first prison ever built. Wind howled through cracked windows. And then came his first sermon, the one that made Mill Haven tremble. Witnesses said he didn't open the Bible that night. He burned it. And as the flames climbed, he said, "If he exists, let him stop me." The fire turned blue. Several fainted. And from beneath the floorboards came a sound no one could explain, a voice laughing. The first sermon of the Church of No God was never written down, but fragments survive on damaged tapes. No prayers, no hymns, only questions. Who remembers the Creator? What does a soul become when it no longer believes? If faith gives life meaning, what gives meaning to faith? Those who attended said Gray asked his congregation to write down their most sacred memory and burn it. He told them, each time you destroy a belief, you remove another chain. This became their creed, a faith in disbelief, a church without God, heaven, or hope. At first, locals thought it was performance art, some academic stunt, until people began vanishing. Bank accounts emptied, homes abandoned overnight. They didn't just lose faith. They erased themselves from existence. By the summer of 1972, Mill Haven no longer looked like a town. It looked like a stage, the backdrop of something pretending to be human life. The locals called it the Village of No Crosses. Every church steeple had been stripped, every graveyard statue of Christ defaced or buried, and every home once belonging to a believer was marked with the same symbol. Up-pointing red triangle, a triangle drawn upside down, carved into wood or painted in ash. Police reports from that summer tell of 39 disappearances in 2 months. Farmers, school teachers, even the town sheriff's wife. But something strange stood out. They all lived on the same road, Hollow Creek Lane, where Reverend Gray had rented an old plantation house. Sound, crickets fade. Wind becomes hollow, whispering tone. Eyewitnesses claimed the windows of that house glowed faint blue at night. And sometimes, when lightning struck nearby, the entire structure seemed to disappear for a second, like a shadow being erased. The few who dared enter said the walls were lined with mirrors, but none reflected faces, only silhouettes. Inside, the words were carved into every beam of wood. Heaven was never above. It was within, and we have emptied it. When authorities attempted to close the property, the tenants had vanished. The only thing found inside were hundreds of photographs of empty fields, all labeled where God once stood. Residents of Mill Haven continue to abandon their homes, leaving behind belongings and livestock. Between 1973 and 1978, the Church of No God became an invisible epidemic. It spread, not through sermons, but through whispers. Newspaper archives show the same pattern in 6 other states. Abandoned buildings found with the upside-down triangle burned into the door. Witnesses reported hearing silent sermons broadcast over dead radio frequencies at 3 a.m. The Federal Bureau of Investigation opened an inquiry under the codename Operation Hollow Faith. But even the reports went missing. A former agent, name redacted, spoke years later. Every time we tried to trace the group, our files corrupted. I mean literal, physical damage. Hard drives melted. Tape snapped, like something didn't want to be found. A sound, tape reel stops. Silence. Low breath on MIC. Locals in Mill Haven said the town became lighter, as if people themselves were fading away. Shadows seemed thinner. Mirrors fogged for no reason. And in one incident, a child's reflection failed to appear at all. Then came the final report before the town was abandoned. All remaining residents have relocated. Structures deemed unsafe. Last sighting of Reverend Malcolm Gray, April 19, 1978. Status, unknown. But years later, in 1984, an aerial survey photo revealed something impossible. The foundation of the church was gone, yet its shadow still appeared in the image. Deep beneath the ground, where the old sugar mill once stood, police uncovered what they described as an inverted sanctuary. Walls painted black, pews carved into the floor instead of standing upright. And at the center, a pulpit made from shattered mirrors, fused together. The carvings read like scripture, but backward, entire verses from Genesis written in reverse Latin. One phrase appeared repeatedly. Unmake the maker. Investigators discovered fragments of film reels hidden inside jars. When developed, they revealed gatherings, men, women, even children, standing in silence around that mirrored pulpit. Each person held a candle, and when the flame went out, they smiled. Experts reviewing the footage noticed something else. Each participant's reflection remained smiling even after the person stopped. That became the central myth of the church. That belief in nothing could make one immortal within the reflection. We don't pray anymore. One final police report described the scene after the ritual site collapsed. No bodies recovered, only impressions on the floor, shaped like human figures facing upward. From that day on, the Church of No God was officially labeled a spiritual disappearance event. But in Mill Haven, it was simply called the First Silence. For years, the story of the Church of No God faded into rumor, until the children began to speak. Between 1986 and 1992, 12 individuals came forward, all born to families who had vanished in Mill Haven. Each claimed to remember the same dream. We were standing in a room of mirrors, but none of us had faces. They were called the children of the hollow prayer. Psychologists said the dreams were trauma responses, a shared hallucination. But there was one problem. Every child drew the same exact symbol, the inverted triangle, from memory, though none had ever seen it. In one interview, a girl named Marlene Goss, age 9, said something that froze the investigator. They told us God left because he got tired of being believed in. So now we have to be quiet, so he doesn't find us. By 1994, 6 of those children had gone missing again. No signs of struggle, just open bedroom windows and a faint scent of burned wax. The local sheriff at the time, Henry Calder, said, "I used to think it was just a story. But I swear, When we searched the woods, we heard church bells underground. And then came the first physical evidence that the church still existed. A farmer found cassette tapes buried beneath a tree, sealed inside glass jars, each labeled by date. The latest one read, December 12, 1993, the return begins. Faith dies in silence, but silence never dies. The recovered tapes were taken to a university lab for restoration. Their origin was confirmed as Mill Haven Parish, but no one could explain the voice. Experts compared it to old recordings of Reverend Malcolm Gray, but it wasn't a match. It was deeper, almost inhuman. Then something impossible. The audio spectrum of the voice contained human heartbeat frequencies. Every time the voice said the word God, the sound wave showed a pulse. Audio engineers described it as alive. But there was something else. A faint echo behind the main voice, dozens whispering the same words milliseconds later, as if responding from another room. A linguist tried isolating those whispers. She said they formed sentences, backwards. And when played in reverse, they said, "You found the voice. Now, let it find you." That same week, the lead technician was found unconscious in his lab. Before he was hospitalized, he told reporters he saw someone standing behind the reflection of the glass window. The lab shut down. The tapes were locked away, and the case was officially closed under psychological contamination risk. But one of the assistants leaked a final snippet online years later. It was one sentence, barely audible. When belief dies, the mirror opens. What no one knew was that the church had held 22 secret services before its collapse, each one dedicated to unlearning creation. But a 23rd service was found recorded on unmarked VHS in 2007, inside a condemned church near Baton Rouge. The footage begins normal. People sit quietly in pews. They look ordinary, calm, breathing, human. At the front stand a man wearing a white robe with no symbol. His face never turns to the camera. He speaks one phrase. "Welcome to the Church of No God. You are already forgiven, because there is no one left to forgive you." At first, the crowd repeats softly. Then, one by one, they begin to stand, raising hands, as if in worship, but their lips don't move. The audio becomes filled with whispering. The screen flickers. When analyzed frame by frame, researchers saw shadows continuing to move even after the people stopped. And near the final minute, the camera pans accidentally, revealing a mirror behind the altar. In the reflection, the room is empty. The final frame shows only text scratched into the wall beside the camera. "This is the last faith, and you are part of it." That tape was seized by authorities, classified immediately, and logged as evidence of mass psychological infection, though no illness was ever identified. The 23rd service was the last recording ever found. But across Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi, locals still report hearing that same sermon broadcast faintly over dead radio frequencies at 3:07 a.m. Welcome to the Church of No God. In 2009, a freelance filmmaker named Aaron Lasker claimed he found the real location of the Church of No God. He uploaded a 15-second teaser online. A decaying chapel surrounded by trees shaped like crosses, and a caption that simply read, "God wasn't there, but something else was." The video went viral. Then, it was gone. All copies erased, the uploader's account deleted. A week later, Lasker's roommate filed a missing persons report. Police entered his home and found his camera equipment melted. Literally melted, as if exposed to radiation or extreme heat. But on one of his damaged memory cards, technicians recovered 2 seconds of corrupt footage. It showed Aaron standing inside the chapel, staring at the altar. He whispers something softly, almost afraid. It's not abandoned, it's breathing. Then the footage cuts to static, and a shadow passes across the lens, moving toward him from behind. When the footage was enhanced, investigators saw that the chapel's walls were covered in human handprints, some pressed from the inside of the stone. Every print had only 4 fingers. Public records show that after Lasker vanished, a classified memo was circulated under the Department of Defense's Cognitive Hazard Division. The title, Project Reverse Faith. The document describes a mimetic contagion originating from auditory and symbolic exposure to certain religious inversions. In plain English, it claimed belief itself could be infected. One paragraph was declassified years later. Prolonged contact with the Church of No God material induces derealization, self-erasure, and uncaused memory formation. Subjects report hearing a choir sing in their own voice. A former analyst, name redacted, broke her silence in 2016. She said the government had been collecting mirrors and religious artifacts connected to the site. When asked why, she said only this: reflections were changing shape. They stopped matching the people. She later disappeared after a recorded interview, leaving behind one note: is standing behind the words. To this day, no one knows how many of those files still exist. But one image leaked from the archives shows a sealed wooden door labeled, "Confession Room. Do not open during service hours." The timestamp, 3:07 a.m., the same time the old tapes used to play themselves. Locals in Millhaven claim that every year, on March 7th, the old church ruins echo with bell sounds. But when recorded, the audio plays backward, perfectly reversed, like a rewind no one pressed. In 2018, paranormal investigators from an online channel visited the ruins at night. Their footage, live-streamed for 2 hours, shows nothing unusual. Until 3:07 a.m., the team hears whispers from underground, like breathing mixed with speech. Their equipment begins recording temperature drops of exactly 7 degrees Celsius in each corner of the chapel. Then, the camera pans down, and for a single frame, every shadow in the room points upward. Viewers later noticed something horrifying. In that frame, reflected in one of the investigators' eyes, you can see what looks like a crowd of people standing behind them. Dozens of faces, none visible in the physical world. The stream ends abruptly. The video remains online, but if you play it past the final second, some users report hearing a faint voice say, "Do not replay faith." After that night, the Church of No God was officially declared a cultural psychological anomaly. But the locals still say the same thing every March: don't pray in the dark. Something else might answer. When the investigative team returned to collect the remaining relics from the site, they found something strange. The chapel's walls, once bay stone, were now covered in mirrors. Each mirror bore the same engraved phrase at the bottom corner: "See your sin." But there was a problem. The team brought no mirrors. And the engravings? They matched none of the team's handwriting. The footage recovered from that night shows the lead investigator, Carter Mays, approaching one of the mirrors. He raises a flashlight and freezes. In the reflection, he isn't alone. Standing behind him, not in the room, only in the glass, is a tall figure in a priest's robe, its face completely featureless. Mays whispers, "Is watching from the other side." Seconds later, the camera falls to the floor. You hear glass shatter, then a voice, distorted, whispering, "Faith was never yours to keep." The mirrors were later collected and transported to a federal lab for testing. All 7 mirrors shattered overnight, each one bleeding a thin, dark liquid later confirmed to be human blood. The liquid contained trace DNA from over 40 individuals, all of them previously declared missing between 1989 and 2012, the same years the church operated. And in the reflection of one surviving shard, investigators claimed they saw a man smiling back, even though they were standing in total darkness. 2 months after the mirror incident, one final artifact surfaced, a cassette tape labeled simply, "Sermon Number 0." It was found inside an unmarked envelope sent to a journalist who once covered the church. The return address, from the congregation. The recording begins with silence. Then, a slow, rhythmic tapping, like a heartbeat through static. After 37 seconds, a voice begins to speak. "Brothers and sisters, we no longer pray to him. We pray for him." The speaker describes a ritual, not of worship, but of replacement. They believed God had abandoned the world, and that by surrendering their belief, they could force the divine to return. They called it the emptying. "We erase his name," the voice says, "so he remembers us." As the sermon continues, Background voices chant softly. Hundreds of them, but their tones are reversed. When the recording is played backward, the chants say, "We are what he left behind." At the end of the tape, the final line repeats 3 times. The door opens from inside. Then, silence. But in the waveform of the audio file, technicians discovered something terrifying. A faint, pulsing pattern that forms an image when visualized. A perfect outline of the church's floor plan. And beneath it, a second shape. A chamber no one had ever seen. Excavations beneath the church ruins began quietly in 2023. No media coverage. No official statements. What they found below would never be released. But leaked reports described a mass burial site. Each skeleton positioned in the same posture. Kneeling, facing downward. And beneath the remains, a stone altar engraved with 7 words. "We built God to watch us die." The excavation was sealed within 48 hours. The workers who uncovered it never returned to their jobs. Some later reported seeing faces in mirrors. Others said they heard hymns echoing from drain pipes at night. To this day, the Church of No God remains off-limits, fenced, unmarked, and silent. But locals swear, on moonless nights, if you stand outside the ruins and listen closely, you'll hear the bells ring backward again. The church was never abandoned. It simply changed who it worships. And now, it waits for new believers. This is Dark Truth, where reality fractures, and the truth hides in the dark. If you dare to know what others bury, subscribe, and step deeper into the dark.